Questions? Awesome. Okay. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Lulusu Open Forum of 2023. My name is Abigail, and I'm the president and publisher of Wilfrid Laurier University Student Publications, and I'm going to be moderating today's Open Forum with the Wilfrid Laurier University Student Union President candidate, Megan Spendler. Is that how you pronounce her last name? Awesome. This is going to be recorded, so this is mostly if anybody else is floating in and out, but if they don't want to be recorded, they can stand off to either side of the room, but that's just a broader note for anybody that wants to be in person. We will have a time to do audience questions as well, so feel free to send a DM to our Instagram. It's at WLUSP. Yeah, that's it. So I am just going to I introduce myself, and then we are going to do the structure. So our opening statement will come from Megan, and then we'll move into some icebreaker questions, and then after that we are going to do a actual formal president questions, which aren't going to be too long as there's only you, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break, kind of let some audience questions come in. If they do, and then we will come back, do audience questions, and then you'll do a quick 1-minute closing statement, and then the open forum will be completed. So cool. Awesome. And then Megan, whenever you're ready, I'm going to let you roll into your opening statement.
Cool. So my name is Megan. I'm in my 4th year of the business program with a minor in geography. So clearly I am running to be your next student union president. I will definitely admit that I came to this conclusion a little bit later than candidates typically do, but once I did, I was all in. I have quite a bit of experience within the student union and outside, and those are ultimately the experiences that led me to want to run for this position and be able to lead the student union next year. I'm really excited for this opportunity and to obviously recognizing the fact that I'm the only candidate, a little bit of a different structure, but nonetheless, I'm still really excited to run a good campaign and then be your next student union president.
Opening statement. We're going to go into some icebreaker questions. So the first one is, what is your favorite season and why?
I would say my favorite season is summer. So I know a lot of people go for like when their birthday is. My birthday is in fall, so definitely would be like my second favorite. But summer, like I just don't really like the cold. And obviously now it's different, like with co-op and jobs and stuff. But normally summers are pretty chill. My family has a cottage in Shirks and Shores, which is like south of Niagara. So it's always nice to go there and like hang out with your friends. And the summer is just good vibes. So I would have to say summer for sure.
Awesome. And if you could be a famous person for a week, who would you choose to be and what would you do?
That's a good question. I'm a really big sports fan. That's one of my biggest hobbies outside of like school and extracurriculars. So I would have to say LeBron James, just a classic basketball player. I played basketball for like 10 years when I was growing up competitively. So I've always been a LeBron James fan. And I think it would be really interesting to be a professional athlete for a week and just live that life. Obviously very different than how we live day to day. So that would be my answer, just because that's one of my biggest hobbies.
It's a fun person to choose. And what is your favorite thing about Laurier?
Yeah, that's tough to answer. I mean, I started right before the pandemic, so I definitely have like a lot of different experiences because I had a year of normal routine and then everything got a little bit interrupted. So I would say my favorite thing is just the culture. So I know people say it and it probably sounds like a broken record. Both my parents went to Laurier as well, and they always stress how the culture is just so tight knit here and it's such a community. And it's hard to actually believe it until you're in it. But like I said, I've got very involved throughout school, and I really, really love that aspect of it. And I think you're able to do that just because of how small and tight knit our campus is and the community is. And just like walking down the street, like it's easy to just see someone, because Laurier is such a small campus. So I really just like that feel that I get, and I believe my parents when they said it, but then I actually was able to witness it when I got here. So I would say that's the main thing, just the culture and like the tight knit community, because it really resonates with you.
Awesome. And our last icebreaker is, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say definitely like don't sweat the small things. So just for like some background, like I'm a business student, I was in co-op, so that was obviously quite interesting in the first year. I was getting worked up over quite literally everything because obviously co-op is competitive when you're business, and you have to apply to get in and have the grades and do the interview. So I would literally be like probably crying over like a 2% assignment. I think it's really easy in the heat of the moment to get caught up in things and think that everything is like the end all be all. But I've really learned over the last 4 years that like, yes, grades are important, but they don't define you. And I think it's just really important to take a step back whenever you're working on something and realize that it's not going to make or break your entire life or your entire career. Because I know I was in that mindset in first year. So that's how I would say. I have my brother's in grade 12, he's starting next year. So I've already been having like some talks with him about like, don't worry, like if you don't do well on an exam, like it's not going to ruin your entire life. So I would say that just kind of take a step back and realize that not everything's as big as you think it is in the heat of the moment.
Awesome. Well, that concludes our icebreaker questions. We're going to move into the formal presidential questions,
Cool.
and you feel free to answer like as much or as little as you would like.
Okay.
Don't feel you need to take up any space. So first question we have is, why did you decide to run for SU president, and what are your key platform points?
Sure. So I touched on it a bit, but the main reason I decided to run, like I said, I have a wide range of experience through the Students' Union. I joined in first year as a Shiner general, and I was a general for 3 years. I then proceeded to join the food bank, and I was an executive of volunteer and training liaison. So I oversaw all the generals that would pack our parcels. Then I joined hiring and recruitment as a logistics executive. So that's where I really learned about the committees, because I was scheduling interviews for them to hire executives and generals. And finally, I joined the student leadership executive team this year as an AVP. So I'm associate vice president of clubs and associations. All that to kind of say all this experience through the Students' Union has really showed me how much students can get out of the Students' Union. And I think it's quite unfortunate that not enough students engage with the Students' Union. So I think next year I really want to push that forward and just really show the students that we're here for them and we're open to hearing their feedback. And I've just had such a positive, I was also a head icebreaker. So many things, I forgot one. But I've just like met so many people and gained so many skills through my experiences on the Students' Union. And I really just want to share that with the students next year. Key platform points. So I have 10 pillars. I would say some are like kind of bigger than others and have like more sub points. I would say the key one that I would really want to like emphasize is ED&I. So obviously equity, diversity, and inclusion. So being the associate vice president of clubs and associations has really opened my eyes to equity deserving groups on campus as I work with clubs on a daily basis that represent those groups. So that's really been eye-opening for me. And I think that's a really big priority for me going forward, is just furthering what's been happening this year with that type of lens and even like improving it, as well as academic success. So I know that coming out of the pandemic, there's been a little bit of a struggle for students adjusting, which is totally understandable. Like I said, having younger siblings, I've totally seen how it's hard to come out of the pandemic, not doing exams and doing virtual schooling, and then all of a sudden you're thrown back into it. So I definitely recognize that academic success is really important and has definitely been a struggle coming out of the pandemic and needs to be prioritized. I also have Brantford specific points that I'm really passionate about. Obviously, they are a much smaller campus than Waterloo, but doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be recognized the same way. So I have lots of different priorities that I want to work on for them next year. And also student leadership. So being associate vice president of clubs, I've got to know a lot of club presidents really well. And just running clubs and having so many clubs on campus, it's so amazing because it gives students so many ways to get involved. And I really want us to be able to support those clubs and associations better next year. So those are just a few, and also student engagement is a big one. So just different programming and stuff that I can touch on a bit more later, but those are about 5 or 6 out of the 10, but yeah, there's 10 in total with sub points underneath each.
Our next question is, what role do you believe the Students' Union serves, and how do you believe it affects the student experience?
Yeah, for sure. So the Students' Union serves like a bunch of different roles if you really think about it. Like we do so many things on campus that students actually don't even know that falls underneath us. So a lot of students have no idea that we run orientation week, that we have a food bank, that we run ERT, foot patrol, healthy lifestyles. So we have so many different roles, and I think it's really amazing to see how many different things one organization can do. So like I said, we have so many different committees, and we run orientation week, and we do this and we do that. And there's so many roles in the Students' Union. And there's so much value that students can get from that I really want to push forward more next year. Like a lot of students don't know that you can get 5 parcels a semester. That's just something that's not known well enough on our campus. So I think that it's really important next year that myself as the president and the VPs and the AVPs really push the Students' Union out to students. And I think there's an opportunity to do that more, especially coming out of the pandemic, because we do have so many different committees and we serve so many different roles on campus that are going underutilized. So I think there's a big opportunity for that and for students to really get the full value from the Students' Union.
So, and you touched on it a little bit already, but throughout your time at Laurier, what have you been involved in terms of extracurriculars that you would believe like would help prepare you for this role?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, I kind of touched on my student union specific experiences just to summarize again. Shinorama General, Food Bank Executive, Hiring Recruitment Executive, Head Icebreaker, now Associate Vice President of Clubs. So that's student union specific. On another note, I'm also a campus ambassador. So I give tours on campus, essentially is the short way to summarize that. I'm also a business student, so I'm involved currently, and this is everything I do currently. So I'm currently on 2 LASSOC clubs, so the Laurier Student Society, and I've been involved in other clubs over the past couple of years too. So all this to say, I really tried to get involved with different aspects of campus. So I didn't want to just be involved with the Students' Union or just be involved with LASSOC. I purposely wanted to diversify myself, and originally I was doing that obviously to build different skills and hopefully use that towards like a post-grad job, but then it kind of turned into using it for this, which is obviously good. But I think having so much experience on campus will really help me because I do have a diverse understanding of different aspects. So like being on the food bank firsthand, I was there packing parcels and making the schedule. Being on hiring and recruitment, I understand how we schedule interviews for volunteers and why those timelines are important and that kind of thing. So I think my experience will really help because I'll be able to tap into the departments a little bit more than the average person would be able to because of my experience actually in those departments. So I think that's really where my experience will come in handy the most, is just actually having hands-on experience with like a lot of the things that the Students' Union does.
And as an AVP, what do you believe the importance of the vice presidential roles are, and what level of autonomy do you plan to afford those people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the vice presidents are very, very, very important to the Students' Union. So obviously, like being president, I will set out goals and priorities and kind of set the tone for the year. But the vice presidents and the associate vice presidents are essentially the ones that are going to execute those goals. So it's really important to have a strong vice president team because they will help me execute my goals. And if it's people that I don't align with and don't see eye to eye with, that's obviously not going to contribute well to the student experience because there'll be some back and forth there, and we want to make sure that everybody's working towards the same goals. In terms of autonomy, I think it's super important to give quite a bit of autonomy to these individuals. I think once priorities and goals are established at the beginning of the year, and if we have a good plan for that, it'll be a lot easier to give autonomy because everybody will be on the same page. So I know Shane Singleton, the current president, has done a really good job of communicating his goals and his values to his team, and he's able to award them with autonomy and like trust them to execute what he wants them to. So I really plan to continue that, and just especially over the summer before students come back to campus, or majority of students come back, I think it's really important to get the whole team on the same page, and then in turn I'll be able to reward them with more autonomy and show that I really do trust them to execute the goals.
And can you please describe the role of the chair and the CGO in relation to the president?
Yeah, so the role of the chair, so obviously there's the board of directors and the chair of the board as well. So the board of directors is really important to the operations of the Students' Union. They help ensure that the president is staying within their budget and making sure that everything is okay and on the up and up. So it's really important for me as a president to build strong relationships with the individuals that are on the board and the chair of the board. I think at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goals, and it's really important that we align on that. So I fully intend on building strong relationships with those individuals and just ensuring that we're all working towards the same goals. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
And the CGO in relation to the president.
The CGO. Yeah, so the CGO is obviously going to help oversee the elections and make sure that everything is running smoothly. They're, again, an individual that I will be working with pretty closely in terms of policies and making sure that everything is being followed. So once again, someone that I will look to build strong relationships with and just ensure that we're all on the same page at all times. So I'm definitely aware that these different individuals are people that I need to build relationships with, and I fully intend to do so to make sure that everything runs smoothly and we're all on the same page.
And what is your definition of transparency, and how do you intend on being transparent and accountable towards the students?
Yeah, I think transparency is really important. I would say my definition is just being like open and honest and upfront. So it's definitely a value that I have for myself in my day-to-day and everything that I do. So I think thinking about next year as the president leading the Students' Union, it'll be important that I'm transparent with my team, that I'm transparent with my coworkers and the full-time staff, and definitely just to be able to have those open and honest conversations rather than holding stuff back and keeping stuff from them. So I think that'll be super important to just enforce. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
And he said, how do you intend on being transparent and accountable toward like the student body?
Yes, so that's super important as well, because as the student union president, you're essentially representing the whole student body. So I think even I've only been campaigning for a couple of days, but even since I have been campaigning, I've been telling students that next year I really want to work off of student feedback. So I think taking in student feedback and actually coming up with deliverables from that is a form of being transparent, because you're accepting their feedback and you're thinking about it and you're telling them that you're willing to act on it. So I think it's just like really being down to earth with them too, and just like with students, like coming across as more of like, I'm here for you. Like, obviously I'm overseeing like the whole like students union, but at the end of the day, like we want to enforce what students want to see. So I think it's just having those open and honest like conversations, and just ensuring that the student body knows that the student union is here for them and we want to enforce whatever they want to see, and not just like what we want to see, because we're not students anymore. Like a lot of us will have been graduated. So I think it's really important to just have those open lines of communication with current students to really get a grasp of what they want to see.
And you touched on it a little bit before, but how do you plan to handle programming and services on the Brantford campus so that students feel included in the Waterloo-based programming?
Yeah, good question. So obviously I'm very aware from the different conversations that I've had with Brantford students that there is often a little bit of a feeling of neglection, and that there's things that the Waterloo campus receives that the Brantford campus doesn't. And I'm fully aware that that is something that has been felt over the past couple of years. So looking forward to next year and how I will approach the Brantford campus and programming. So I'm obviously aware that programming does happen on that campus, but I think there's more of an opportunity for some of the Waterloo staffs to support Brantford a bit more. So increased programming, I think, is a big thing over there that we can enact. As well as another thing that Waterloo has that Brantford does not is gender neutral washrooms. So a pretty specific point, but if any of you students have ever been in the 2-4 lounge, I'm sure you've used the single stall washrooms that are just over there. So Brantford campus actually has none of those. They have male and female washrooms with the signs that say you're welcome to go to whichever one you want to, which we also have, but that's another thing that Waterloo has that Brantford doesn't. So something that I want to advocate for, and as well as food offerings. So I think there's an opportunity for myself to advocate for that as well for the Brantford campus. And I really think that as the president, although I will be located in Waterloo, it's really important to support Brantford just as equally. So ensuring that I'm going there on a weekly basis and making time for them and prioritizing them and building a really strong connection with my vice president on that campus will be really, really important, as they're pretty much overseeing a lot of the operations, since I'll only be there a couple times a week. So I think it's just honestly making sure you don't forget about them. Like it would be easy to, since I'm located on the Waterloo campus, but it's just keeping them at the top of my mind at all times and working really closely with the VP and the other Brantford staff. I think that'll be huge for next year.
And going off of that, how will you prioritize or plan your schedule around being present on both campuses to ensure that Brantford students feel prioritized, as you mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned, I'll obviously be located on the Waterloo campus. The really great thing is I'll have 24 access to a car, so it will be very easy to go back and forth between campuses, and I fully intend to do so. I think if anything, the way I'm running my campaign will be a really strong indication of how much I'm going to Brantford. So for context, I traveled to the Brantford campus yesterday. I will be going back tomorrow, and I'm also going Thursday night for trivia. So I'm really hoping that that is resonating with Brantford students, and really showing them that I will prioritize them and go to their campus. So I think just even doing that through my campaign will really show students how I will be as a president, and I fully intend to go there once, if not twice a week, depending on the circumstances. But I know that from what I've heard is something that Shane has been doing really well and that the Brantford campus has appreciated. So I fully intend to continue to do that. And I think the way I've been running my campaign kind of speaks for itself, I would hope.
Awesome. And what's your plan for increasing voter interest and turnout for both this election and the following one that will happen in 2024?
Yeah, so good question. Obviously that is something that's been on my mind, is just voter turnout and how to engage students. I think it's really interesting this year, as I intended to have competitors. So my marketing strategy and all of that was kind of built upon the fact that I thought that it was like a competition, and now it's turned into a yes no vote, so a little bit different. I think it's really important that when I'm boothing and whoever's at my booth is not only promoting me, but also just voting in general. Every student pays fees to the Students' Union. And I think it's really important that students have a say in what's happening with that money. So what they want to see with the Students' Union, like if they want to see different programming or whatever they want to see, I think it's really important that students understand that everybody pays a fee to the students union. That's not optional. And I think it's really important to have your voice heard and have a say in who's going to be running your students union next year, because we do so much on campus. And we can have a lot of impact given like obviously our personnel and our operating budget, like we can have a lot of impact on campus. So I think students really need to understand that. And that's kind of why we're boothing every single day. We're doing as much as we can to try to get students out there to vote. I think it's really important that students understand the value of their vote and that there's so much the student union can do, and they really should have their voice heard. So I think it's just really like, especially being back in person, it's just getting out there, boothing every single day, like not taking any days off, just really encouraging students to get out there and doing as much as I can throughout the voting days as well to not promote myself, but just promote voting in general, I think will be super important. So it's really just a lot of marketing and a lot of like putting my face out there, my volunteers as well.
Our last formal presidential question is, how do you plan on representing students at Laurier, and what are your ideas for accessing and listening to student concerns?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it is, like I've kind of touched on, it's really, really important to hear student voices. So like I said, I will be a graduate by the time I enter this role. My vice presidents will be graduates as well. So it's really important that we're hearing from the students first, and we are enforcing what they want to see. So one thing is we obviously have the student union online feedback form. One thing that is incorporated in my platform is improvements to that form. Being an associate vice president, I sometimes get responses from that form that I then follow up to. But I think there are opportunities to improve that form in the way that we get feedback from students. I think going forward next year, I'm hoping to have more of an open door policy. Obviously haven't quite worked out the details yet since it's still early, but I think there's a lot of different ways we can receive feedback from students. And I think there's a lot of changes we can make. So that looks like improvements to the form and having more of an open door policy. So whether it's like myself, I go sit in the 2 floor for an hour a week and people can come ask me questions, like depending on what it looks like. But I think there's an opportunity for us to be more like open door policy and also make some improvements to the feedback form.
So that concludes our formal presidential questions. We're just going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to move on to audience questions.
Cool.
All right. We are back. We're going to start answering some audience questions, and Jackson is going to be moderating our online question forum. So whenever you would like to, you can start asking Megan questions.
Awesome. And feel free to, if you have any other questions, send them to @Willusa on Instagram, and I will moderate them. So the first question is, as president, how will you ensure that the annual budget is being used to benefit students?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So I would say with the annual budget, there's obviously, like I mentioned, every student pays a fee to the student union, and that's where our budget comes from. I think there's quite a lot that can be done with that budget. I think next year there's a few things that I would want to allocate more money towards. So given my experience with the clubs and associations department, that's one department specifically that I would like to increase funding to, just because clubs and associations are such a big part of our campus. And we unfortunately were not able to support as much as we wanted to this year. So looking to increase that next year. I think putting more into community outreach. So this isn't something that I've talked about too much, but now seems like a good time to fit it in. So as the student union team, we have about 40 members when it comes to the president, VPs, AVPs, and full-time staff. I think there's more of an opportunity for the student union staff to do community outreach. So whether that's going to volunteer at a soup kitchen or donating to a food drive or a toy drive, whatever that looks like. So I personally would like to put a little bit of the budget towards that. And I think that's something that should be important to all students, is that the student union is doing community outreach. So that's another thing that I want to tweak in the budget, as well as just pouring a lot of it into programming. So a lot of students engage with programming, and obviously programming is open to all students and anyone is free to come to them. I think I've quite literally witnessed people make friends at different events that we have at Wilfs or the Turret. So I think it's really important to continue that amount of programming and even potentially more next year. So just to kind of sum that up, obviously the operating budget there's a lot that can be done with it. And throughout my platform, there are a few things that I want to allocate more money towards. But I think just to circle back to another topic, it's just important to get student feedback and be really honest and transparent about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and be able to accept feedback from students if they want to see more of that or less of that. So just circling back to how we want to have more lines of communication with students for sure.
Awesome, thank you. On the point of your platform, just a quick one is, when will you be releasing your platform online for people to read?
Yeah, so currently I have my platform in my Instagram bio. My Instagram is at Megan 4 WLUSU Pres. If you ever see me boothing, I have my platform on a QR code. I do not have a website, so the main way to access my platform is through my Instagram bio, or if you ever see me boothing in the concourse, as well as shortly, either today or tomorrow, my marketing team will be posting graphics on Instagram with shorter points about my platform. So those would be the ways to access it.
Great, thank you. Next question is, how will you help how you help support / train new board directors?
Okay. Yeah, so with new board directors, obviously I was at the all candidates meeting on Sunday, so I know that there are some new board members. I'm not overly familiar with how involved the president gets with that, to be completely transparent. I know we've talked about transparency a lot, so I'm not entirely sure how involved the president is with training those certain individuals. I'm obviously more than happy to receive any training I need to be able to help these individuals integrate into their role. But I'm currently not overly knowledgeable about how much the president trains them, but obviously open to doing as much as I can with them, and helping out wherever I can once I start transitioning into the president role.
Great, thank you. A question that I think is about one of your specific points you've already mentioned, but what are your specific plans for EDI at Laurier?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, like I touched on a little bit earlier, ED&I, or equity, diversity, and inclusion, is a very important topic personally. Given my role at the student union currently, I work with equity deserving groups every single day. We have so many different clubs on campus that represent different student groups, and I have the privilege of working with those groups and helping them put on events and that kind of thing. So ED&I is a very important topic to me. I think currently we are doing a good job, but there is room for improvement. So obviously C-Study exists on campus, which is the Center for Student Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. I think next year, a big opportunity is for us to collaborate with them more. So a few different ways that looks like is, for example, this year we had the gendered and sexual violence assault rally that happened in first semester. I think it's really important to make that an annual thing. regardless of who the president is. And with that turnover, I think it's important that I put in a structure to ensure that that rally happens every single year, regardless of who the president is and who the vice presidents are. So that's one specific tangible thing that I would like to do. I think there's also a lot of opportunity for us to promote CSETI more. So when I decided to run for Student Union President, I did a deep dive into CSETI and their different social media programs they have. I was absolutely astonished by the amount of events they do and webinars and workshops and speaker series. It's absolutely incredible. So I think given the following that we have on social media, I think we have more of an opportunity to help them promote those events and kind of take a bigger role in those events as well. So more partnerships with them and collaborations. And an ED&I point that I kind of touched on with the Brantford campus is gender neutral washrooms. That is something I really want to advocate towards and work with facilities to ensure that that can happen, hopefully in the next year, if not just shortly after that. Another equity, diversity, and inclusion point is walkable campuses. So very specific, but I know that on the Brantford campus, there are some intersections that students view as unsafe and they're unable to cross safely. So that's very specific and would require working with the city of Brantford. But another thing that I want to advocate for and work towards as well. So I think it just comes down to mostly working with CSETI, like they are the one body that works every single day to make sure that students are getting what they deserve on campus, regardless of their background or their religion or their gender or whatever it may be. So I think it comes down to working with them, and they're ultimately the experts in this topic. And I don't think at the Student Union we should pretend to know more than we do. I think we should work with them. So I think there'll be a lot more collaboration with them next year and helping them work towards their priorities as well and more partnership.
Thank you. Next question, then maybe we'll do one more after that, is how will you work with the Dean of Students in both Waterloo and Brantford to advocate for students' rights?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously when I decided to run for president, I did have a meeting with Ivan Joseph. I think so based on that conversation I had with him, they have a lot of things that they want to enforce next year, and they really want to see the support of the president on those. So one specifically would be coming up with a more holistic way to offer academic advising. So with how it stands as a business student, I would go to BBA advising if I had a specific question. If I was a double degree, I'd also have to go to the Faculty of Science or the Faculty of Arts. So right now it's a little bit separated. So I know that that is one thing they've had on their radar, is to come up with a more holistic approach to be able to support students. And I would really like to back that up and help them really see that through. So I'm very open to working with both offices on both campuses. I think with the conversations I've had so far, I think they are fully aware that I'm very open to working with them. Like I mentioned earlier, I recognize that academic success is specifically a struggle coming out of a global pandemic, and I know it's something that needs to be prioritized. So I'm very open to working with them on whatever priorities they have. They are able to work more efficiently when they have the support of the president. So I'm more than happy to support their priorities and work with them to ensure that students are getting what they need academically and outside of the classroom as well.
So, and one last question is, what skills do you think are necessary for an SU president to have, and how do you demonstrate them?
I mean, I think there's a bunch. I could probably answer this for like an hour, but I think one of the biggest ones is teamwork. So being the president, you're going to work with vice presidents, you're going to work with associate vice presidents, you're going to work with full-time staff. Like the president works with dozens of individuals every single day. They work with the dean of students, they work with the WILF staff. That's quite a bit of collaboration across campus. So I think teamwork is huge. It's really not an individual job at all. I've done co-ops in the past where I'm just sitting behind my laptop entering data and it feels like it's just me working and no one else. But this role is quite the opposite from that. So I think based on the various teams I've been throughout the years, sports, extracurriculars in school, I'm forever working in teams. I'm barely ever working on stuff on my own. So I think that has really led me to be able, will help me lead the team next year. I think communication is huge too. There's never a day where Shane can go and not talk to someone. So communication is definitely huge. And I think similar to my last point with my different experiences, I've been able to build up my communication skills. And I do think that I'm a very strong communicator, and I'll be able to use that next year with my vice president team and be able to communicate my priorities and ask for help when I need it and recognize that I don't know everything and that I need to hold myself accountable. And then to kind of dive into the next point is like self-accountability. So, and self-awareness. I think that's really important. Naturally, as the president, you are kind of the top of the food chain, but I think it's really important to understand, like to be self-aware and recognize that you don't know everything and that you're going to need help. And sometimes your vice presidents might be more knowledgeable on a topic than you are. So I think just having that self-awareness and being able to take a step back and realize like I don't know everything, I'm still learning. So I think that'll be really important as well, to just hold myself accountable at all times throughout the year, as well as motivation. So just being motivated to get things done. With only a year contract, it's short. So in that time, I want to get done as much as I can and be able to serve the students. And in order to do that, I need to stay motivated. So I can't just take a month off and decide I'm not going to do anything this month because the term is too short to kind of do that. So motivation will be huge. And I think I have really strong motivation intrinsically and extrinsically. So it'll just be really important for me to stay motivated and get my priorities achieved so that I can feel like I've had a successful term. So I would say those are some of the biggest ones. There's definitely, I could list a bunch more, but I would say those for sure are the biggest.
So I believe that wraps up our audience questions. So Megan, I'm going to give you a minute to do a final closing statement, and that will conclude the call.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for everyone who's joined and who submitted questions. I've really enjoyed being able to tell you guys a little bit about myself and my platform. I'm very, very excited to be running for this position. I really hope that I've demonstrated my passion and how much I really do love the Students' Union and how excited I am to support you guys next year. I will be boothing for more days to come, so definitely see me around campus, and please feel free to come up to me and ask questions if you want. But I really am excited for this opportunity. And like I said, if you ever have any more questions, you'll definitely see us throughout campus with the blue t-shirts. So thank you guys for watching, and thanks for submitting your questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. This concludes our WLUSU Open Forum.